Hello, everyone. Welcome to Skills-Based Health on Demand, brought to you by DESE, Missouri Healthy Schools, and MOSHAPE. Today, we are going to talk about the National Health Education Standard 8, Advocacy for Self and Others. I'm joined by Kim Goforth. My name is Brad Rummel. I'm the Health and PE Coordinator for Springfield Public Schools. Kim, how are you?
I am great. Good to see you again, Brad. I am Kim Goforth. I am the K-12 Health and PE Coordinator up in the Columbia Public School District.
Today, we hope that when you finish the video, that you would have these 3 learning objectives completed. One, that you could explain the components and both stages of Standard 8. Secondly, that you could identify what mastery will look like for this selected stage and performance indicator. And then lastly, you'd be able to plan instruction and practice opportunities for your students for that particular stage and Standard 8 performance indicator. And as always, me and Kim have provided a training guide for you to kind of guide your learning. You can access this training guide by clicking down in the description of the YouTube video below. Please feel free to print, write, take notes, or you can download the PDF and use it as a fillable PDF. But either way, the digital copy is beneficial because there are several links on this training guide that will help you access the learning that you need.
All right, let's get rolling. Let's take a peek here at this Standard 8, Advocacy for Self and Others. This states that students will demonstrate the ability to advocate for personal, family, and community health. And so I feel like we kind of have a laundry list there of things that we need to advocate for. But I think that the term advocate or advocate is very powerful. And it's what this whole standard speaks to. And it's having that skill to kind of speak up and act up for yourself. And so it's really putting that out there and owning a lot of your own health practices, and then how that relates to acting up and speaking up for your families, and then the community in which you live in. And so I think that there's this bigness to this, and how do we act up and speak up for all of these different components. And so this particular standard is broken into 2 different stages. And that kind of breaks it apart even further for us. And stage 1 is advocacy for self. And so as students advocate for what they need to become a more health literate person is on one stage. And then stage 2 is advocacy for others. How can students help advocate for maybe someone in their family, maybe a close friend, or maybe a community need that they see that they need to get involved in, or that they want to get involved in. And so this skill will be broken into these 2 stages. And so as we navigate this time that we have together today, we're going to look at each stage individually. And so this goal of stage 1, again, it's advocacy for self. It's to identify appropriate moments for when students need to self-advocate, and then to find the strategies that will clearly advocate what they specifically need or want. And so it's really identifying, when do I need what? And so you can see some examples here, and they all start with the word needing, be it a material or a product or a person, or maybe it's a change in behavior that they are needing, or again, another person to intervene in some of those safe or unsafe behaviors. So that's the goal of stage 1 for advocacy for self. So when you look at stage 1, what does that look like? What it is and what it isn't. I found this to be very fascinating. If a student has a challenge of, oh man, I forgot to bring anything to write with to class. I'm sure that doesn't happen down in Springfield, Brad, but I'm sure students come with everything all the time. Yep. But if they should happen to have this challenge, oh no, I have nothing to write with. A solution is, man, I've got to have something to write with because I need to get my activity done. I need to get my bell work done. I need to do well in school so I can XYZ with my life. And so a self-advocacy statement that is appropriate is to say to another human, I don't have something to write with. I need to borrow a pen or pencil. Do you have one that I could use? So when we talk about needs and wants, and I'm in this crisis, I'm in this challenge, what it's not, and we may have students like this too somewhere around our state, that the challenge is still there. Oop, I have nothing to write with. I think we have some students that a need from wherever they come from, the solution would be, oh, well, I'm not going to do my work then, I think that I just need to be excused because I don't have anything to write with. So an advocacy statement is not, I don't have something to write with. May I be excused from today's assignment? So we have to really focus on what the need is to get our best health practice or school practice in line here. So self-advocacy, me, stage 1, what it is and what it's not. Stage 2, talking about advocacy for others. And these skills are developed to promote health in the community or maybe a family. So we could say community means friends, family, to support other health efforts that are around. The big one there, with consent. So we will talk about that here in just a minute, but helping students find these skills and strategies to help get the word out and to help them act on some things in their community, friends and family, but with consent. So when you look at just friends, family, and communities, there's some examples up there at the top, kind of what is the issue here that's going on, doing some research on solutions, and then getting some commitment from some others around. Now, supporting others, other community efforts, where is my help needed? And so it's giving kids these opportunities and these things to listen, doing some more research, and then asking, hey, do you need my help with that? So that goal of stage 2 is to really say, how can I better everyone else around me? But again, remember, stage 1 is how can I get that help for myself? So 2 different stages here, but that's kind of the overview, kind of the nuggets of that. So what does stage 2 look like and sound like? A little bit tricky. This is so hard to stay in the left-hand box if you're a fixer. If you have students that are pleasers or fixers, this may be a challenge for them. You have to ask for is my help needed here? And then really listening, because the answer may be no, I just need you to do the research and for me. And you have to be willing to do that. What it's not is taking over to say, well, here's how you should fix that problem, or I've already been there. And then, hey, let me tell you what to do. That's really not advocating for. If someone else is trying to get a particular need met, we have to keep these 2 things in balance. And boy, that is tricky. Even as adults, I think we find this tricky. So that's what it looks like for stage 2. So very tricky.
And Kim, I found that just because someone is venting or communicating a frustration, that doesn't mean that they always want you to fix it or help them. So it's important to take that step and ask if they are wanting help or how they want help. Not that I'm a fixer by any means, but I have found that to be true at times.
It's very true. Did your wife tell you that little nugget?
I was hoping that wouldn't come up. I was hoping to keep her out of this, but yes, I may have been told that a time or 2.
All right. I'll call her later and tell her that it was in a positive way.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So as we always like to reflect on this skill and standard itself and how it helps us with our overall goals of health education, I think we can really key in on health literacy here, and how we are helping students build capacity to promote their own healthy behaviors and to encourage their peers to develop and maintain their own healthy behaviors. I mean, that is advocacy to the T. And I think that what's really exciting about this specific standard is that we are really enabling students to become active citizens. We are helping them become active citizens in their communities and their families. And really, that's we want our students to apply their learning to do that. And we have a standard in health education that specifically helps us do that. And so, great. That's my connection. Kim, anything you would like to add on the holistic goals of health education?
I think you nailed it with just health literacy, because if you really dig into that definition, it talks about being healthy yourself and helping others get there. And so, like you said, getting engaged with the community is kind of our civic duty. You know, I partner a lot with our social studies coordinator, and civic responsibility is on us as health, people of health. And so I think you nailed it. Health literacy is our connection.
So we would ask you now to make your connection to the standard. It could be a connection to your health instruction or your program at your site. It could be a connection to the overall health goals. But take a moment, access your training guide, and answer the opening activity, please.
Very good. Let's dig into these performance indicators for this particular standard, and I'm focused here at the secondary level. And I want to draw your attention to the first and last of these performance indicators and really hone in on the verb. So this first performance indicator talks about stating a health enhancing position on a topic and then supporting. And so I think that at this middle school grade span, when we talk about state it is really kind of taking a stand. What are you feeling? What are you passionate about? What is some health information that you've either wrestled with or want to wrestle with? And you state it. You want to take a position. And so I think that when you look at the 9-12 grade span, we'll compare here in just a minute. But then also on the last one, talking about just identifying ways that health messages can be delivered and altered if you need to for different audiences. So at this grade level, we're just kind of looking at identifying different ways. And then the two performance indicators in the middle, also talking about demonstrating and working cooperatively with groups. Those two are going to be the same as you see here in the 9-12 indicators. And so if you go back to this first indicator, when we talked, excuse me, in the state for the first one, I'm just going to state it. Now at this grade span in 9-12, you're going to use it. You're going to put it to use. You're going to not just state it, but you're going to kind of own it a little bit more. And when we talk about accurate peer and societal norms, that's the research piece that I think it's dumped in here, but it's hidden. So you're using that statement that you've made and having some research behind it to be accurate. So I think that this kind of bumps up at the 9-12. And then that last one, when we talked at the 6-8 span about just identifying how health messages and techniques can be delivered, varying in your audience, this particular grade span says adapt it. And to me, that really says, now go change it. Now go do it. So don't use the language that maybe you would have used. Well, this is more textable, but this is more of an email, like a well-drafted email. Now at the high school grade span, it's go do it. Like don't overanalyze, but just do it, make the decision, and go communicate. So I think those are the two level up discussions in the indicators. But again, we're demonstrating, we're actually doing the communicating here. So any other notices that you have, Brad, between the two grade spans?
I would say on indicator 3, I'm noticing that the community for a middle school student is a lot of times their family and their school. Mm-hmm. And then when we move to high school, it specifically says community health. So we're asking high school students to actually work within that community, not just their school or family, but just broaden their reach a little bit more. So good job with the verbs, Kim.
Good notice. Good notice.
So now take a moment. You can access the performance indicators here on your training guide, review your grade span, select a performance indicator that you would like to work with today, and then indicate on question 3, why did you choose that specific performance indicator? What is it about that indicator that made you want to work with it a little bit more? So pause the video, take the time. It's always helpful as a teacher if you're familiar with those performance indicators in your grade span. So that's step 1. And then let's go a step further and let's select one that we're going to work with today. So next we're going to use this backwards design model that all curriculum nerds love. And we are going to use this to help us get our students to the finish line, which is our goals of health education. So we've already begun that work by focusing on our standards. Kim broke down the performance indicators. We're much more familiar with those now. We are going to next dive into what assessments look like. How do we know when students can do and know what they need to be successful? And so Kim's going to break down mastery and what that looks like for advocacy.
Wonderful. So if we take a peek at the 6-8 grade span here, I just pulled a couple of indicators here. So in looking at indicator 1, where again, I said to state a health enhancing position on a topic and support it with accurate information. So if I was needing to break that down and say, what are they going to be doing to show me that they have mastered this indicator? I'd have to break that down into some student-friendly language. And so these 3 bullets underneath, are very student friendly, I feel. I can identify challenges and obstacles that will require this. And so just identifying at this point, what's going to be thrown at me that I really won't be able to advocate like I really feel in my head that I should. Another one, I can identify needs to help me overcome those challenges. So not only can they identify, ooh, that's going to be a problem for me, but here's the thing that I could do to help me overcome that. And then the last indicator, or the last bullet there, I can ask for what I need by stating it, stating my needs, and then requesting the help. And so it's broken down nicely. I think that students can kind of use this as a checklist, like, oh, okay, yeah, here's some challenges. Oh, here's some ways to overcome. Oh, and then here's how I need to say it. And so that is the 6-8 grade span of some to-dos to show mastery. Now in 9-12, look at that. Again, looking just at this standard one, now I'm using accurate information and norms to formulate my message. And so to break that down for a high school student, I can research a community health issue to learn about those norms. And that's that research piece that you don't really see in standard one, the way it's written, that performance indicator, but that's the nugget. And then the second one, I can use that research to formulate some of my valid and reliable health and enhancing behaviors there. So again, that research piece that comes out for students to know, it's going to take a little bit of time to dig into the to-do. So that's their to-do item there for that 9-12 grade span for mastery. So when we look at assessment tools, like that sounds great. I can see that progression, the student-friendly language. What will I have them do to show me? So at the top box there's several indicators thrown together, and it's writing a story at that 6-8 grade span about a situation, about a problem situation where something is going to need to advocate. So they write that story. They can include a little bit of research, but really letting them have the freedom to choose that problem situation and then working the steps of each of the skills. And then the extension, of course, you can add images and to make it a little bit more personal, so it feels a little bit more safe. Now at the high school grade level, having them read a situation or a problem that's already out there. And again, you'd have to take the pulse on your particular district in your classroom to see what is relevant. And so I think putting one out there and then looking for a missing component. Maybe as they worked the system, they didn't find anybody that they could ask for help from. And so letting students identify, well, wait a minute, why didn't they ask for help? Oh gosh, that was missing in my story. And so kind of that, which one of these things is missing kind of assessment tool, but those are just different ways that you can show the to-dos and show mastery of those particular indicators. So just a couple of ideas there that we'd throw at you.
Great examples, Kim. I think it's important that, especially when we consider that backwards design, that before we get too caught up in what we will be teaching that day or what students will, that we consider what do we want students to be able to do and what's that going to look like in our classroom. So now we want you to take a moment to do that for yourself. You can use that performance indicator that you selected. And what will students be doing in your classroom for that performance indicator? You could type or write your I can statement, or you could describe what that assessment tool may look like, or you can do both. But pause the video and take the time to answer question 1 on page 2 of the mastery section. So next comes our backwards design model. We're going to continue moving backwards here. We've focused on standards and assessment so far. And now Kim's going to show us what that teaching progression looks like as we are trying to provide students practice opportunities to master the skill and what that specific instruction will look like to set our students up for success.
All right. Well, again, we're going to divide this into the 2 stages. And RMC Health, I love how they put these linear progressions out there for us. And so just focusing on stage 1, again, that was advocating for self. If you compare the 6-8 grade span to the 9-12, so 6-8 is on the top. Step 1 is to process the situation, kind of that identifying what is happening right now, what do I need help with. Step 2, we're going to focus here for just a minute. Step 2 is called seek attention. And I think there's a difference that you have to be very cautious about. attention getting and attention seeking. And so this is the attention getting. I need to raise some awareness for someone. I need someone to know that I am having a challenge, I'm having a situation, I'm having a need. And so that's what step 2 is in the 6-8 grade span, is to bring it to someone's attention. And so the word seeking attention sometimes can be negative, but that is step 2. Step 3, that's the communication piece, asking for what the student needs. Step 4, my favorite, reflecting. Now compare those steps to the 9-12. Step 1, pretty much the same. What is happening? Step 2 sounds a little bit different. Determine how to approach the situation. And so that speaks to me about how am I going to communicate this and to who? And again, it's just worded different in the 6-8, like not look at me, I need attention, but it's like, okay, I've got to reach out here. And then in 9-12, it is, how am I going to do that and to who? So it's just kind of a level up. And step 3 and 4 are the same for this grade span. So that is stage 1 as a whole. Now, stage 2, when you advocate for others, looks very similar. Step 1, what is the issue? Step 2, investigate or research the issue. Step 3, develop a powerful stance. And that's kind of take a side, pick a side. That is step 3. Step 4 is where the difference will be in these 2 grade spans. Step 4 in the 6-8 grade span is to act on and communicate. So I feel like it's a very, I need to act on it. I have my attention of the people I need to, and then I'm going to communicate, here's where I stand. If you compare that to the 9-12 grade span in step 4, it's I'm taking action. It's all of those things together, and I'm just going and doing it. And so it extends a little bit more than just communicating my stance or my side. And then step 5 is the same, and that very important reflection piece on how the whole process is going. So those are the overall teaching progressions for each stage. Brad, thoughts?
I just like step 2 because I think it gets skipped a lot before I think it's easy for a lot of us, especially as we get to that middle school and high school level, to see when something is wrong or to see when something's needed. But a lot of times we want to act before we've been able to investigate the issue, to really find out both sides of the story. Or
so true.
And I think that there's lots of teachable moments that happen throughout the school year for teachers to demonstrate that and model that, because there's students that are going to need things, and there's going to be opportunities where students need a teacher to advocate for them. And it would be really cool to see a teacher go through these steps and model that as they, instead of just advocating, but taking a moment to use that as a teachable moment, I think.
That's a great idea. So many moments during the year.
Yeah. So just another couple of quick teaching tips. Kim mentioned just the difference between attention getting and attention seeking, and taking a moment to make sure students understand that when advocating for themselves or others, that there are times where we have to seek the attention, and that's a positive thing in that moment. And we need to be able to differentiate between that and what we see so much in our society and we see so much in schools, which is seeking attention for a negative reason, or because they're bored. And we have to make sure to take a moment to make sure students understand that. And then also we want to be culturally responsive. And so we don't want to put ourselves in the position as a teacher to communicate to a class or to a student that this specific way of getting attention or advocating is inappropriate, because every situation is different. Every community is different. Every school, family, and student are different. And so don't put yourself in the position where you are judging the way a student has sought attention, because it's very possible you have not been in that specific situation before. And just because I had someone to seek, that doesn't mean that student had that same person in their life or in their circle to seek. And so they had to use a different strategy to seek attention. And so I think we just, within this skill and standard, be very careful about judging or saying correct or incorrect on ways to seek attention. Kim, anything you'd add to that? Or
just great point. And in fact, the practice opportunity that I'll mention talks about that very thing. Students may not have had the resources that we had, and they may have been told at home, this is how you get attention over your 5 or 6 siblings. And so we don't know that. And so to say a right or a wrong or a good or a bad or the best way versus the worst way, we have to leave those comments out. So yeah, just great point. Great point. All right, so let's really talk about planning. So as we look at planning our instruction, this is just kind of a high-level overview. Again, we start with our assessment. We look at the performance indicators, look at the to-dos. And then I think in this particular skill set, we have to pick a stage. So is this going to be directed towards advocating for themselves, or is it more of a communal advocacy skill or activity? Then go back and review those steps. Whichever stage you pick, what are those steps? And then the sub steps and the sub skills that need to be focused on. Then you can start to plan the strategies and then the practice opportunities for students. And then you can either move on to the next stage or stay there and live in that world for a while. So that's just kind of high level overview of planning. So I just picked one of these, and I chose a 9-12 grade span, stage 1. So remember, stage 1 was advocating for self. And I've jumped down to step 2. And so this is just kind of modeling how you would set up your teaching plan, your teaching progression for step 2, which is determine how to approach the situation. So if you focus in on the sub skills here, we've got 2 big ones: identifying people who can support. And then the second sub-skill is to use appropriate strategies to ask for help. And the word appropriate, I think, is key here. And in fact, it's over in the vocabulary list that you'll see here in this skill guide. So what approach are you using? Is it appropriate or inappropriate? And then all of this is talking about gaining attention, and so seeking that attention. And so if we focus here just on step 2, some practice opportunities for students, I think that the first step when we are just trying to find the who, and Brad spoke to this perfectly just a minute ago on the teaching tips, the first activity or practice opportunity would be to have whole group kind of a brainstorm on, if you run into a sticky situation, you run into a problem, you run into a healthy thing that you want to advocate for yourself about, who or what can you go to for help? And the reason I say whole group is because of what Brad said. I may be sitting next to a student that has never talked to the school counselor, for example, and I say, oh, Miss Such and Such has helped me several times. She's a good resource. She's connected me with a couple of people in the community. And the person next to me might say, I don't even know who that is. And they may be in the very school. And so having kind of a group brainstorm, an exhaustive list of people in the school, in their families, in the community, I think can be very powerful for this self-advocacy. So that's that sub-skill. Then if you add that to the next layer of, maybe it's a student journaling, and they're making their laundry list of people who could help. On the right side of that, if you want to do a T-chart, you can do that too. But okay, if I have this health practice that I want to advocate for myself about, what obstacles am I going to run into? Is it going to be, I don't have a car to get me to the gym, if that's something I want to do. I don't have the financial resources to get me here, or I have had a run-in with this person before and they're going to really make it difficult for me to advocate for myself. So pairing the obstacle with maybe some people that I just heard about that can help, and making some connections. If I hit this obstacle, boy, I've got this person I can lean on. So that's the identifying part. So that's that first sub-skill. I think the next practice opportunity can add the layer of, okay, now how am I going to communicate to this person who can help me wrestle with this barrier? Is it an email? Is it a formal email? Do I have to pick up the phone and call? Do I need to do a little bit more research first? And so I think that honing the how I'm going to communicate, and then partnering maybe with some of this language of health literacy, writing down those statements, practicing, having some role play conversations just with a partner on saying these to get help from this outside organization. I will call them on Monday. I will say this, and maybe preparing a script, but then they're really getting the best way to communicate with this maybe new person that they never have before, and then taking some time to reflect. And so I think that the final layer that teachers need to give students opportunities to practice is we can set this framework up for them, but then the actual going to do, I think, speaks to us some of these strategies. And there's this table that we've put in here for you, and it's in the health skill guides. The strategies on the left can give some good examples. And so if a student says, I need to just call this person. Okay, so example, you can't figure out how to access your account when applying for college. You call the student helpline. Kind of like, when am I supposed to do that? Is it appropriate to call? We may have thought it was appropriate, and then we think, no, that's probably more of a formal letter that I need to do. You go to your teacher's office after school, but she's not there. You leave a handwritten note. I think today's kids and students may say, well, I'll just leave a message in the Brad used Canvas, right? In the Canvas classroom, or if it's the Google Classroom, not knowing if it's an emergency, how to message, and if it's not an emergency. So I think that giving them practice opportunities on when to use what strategy, I think, is very helpful, and then letting them kind of role play that out with a partner. So that's one way you can look at this step 2, to let kids wrestle with it in practice. So those are just some ideas.
So next, we would invite you to do the same thing Kim just went through, but with your selected performance indicator. So what would your steps look like? Maybe what sub-skills are you going to focus on? What would your instruction look like? And then question 2, what would your practice opportunities look like for your students? What will students be doing? And how will you know when your students have mastered the skill or indicator? So on page 3, complete those 3 questions related to the teaching progressions. And if you need support and help, me and Kim would strongly encourage you to access the RMC Health Skill Guides. You heard Kim touch on them a lot. They're linked in your training guide. They provide not only the sub-skills, but the vocab, the guiding questions, the performance indicators, resource bank, suggested learning activities. It's not a curriculum. It's a guide to help you with your planning and instruction, and it partners really well if you already have an existing curriculum guide, especially if your curriculum guide, or if your curriculum is more content focused. This is a great way to use this guide to help you infuse more skills-based health education within your current existing curriculum. So now we always like to process and try to make some connections from the skill itself, advocacy, to our content, because we all teach this content. A lot of times our instruction is organized by content, depending on where you're at. And so where does this skill or standard fit in within these different contents that we've pulled from the HECAT? And as I look at these, you could obviously make a case for any, but personal health and wellness is one that really sticks out to me. When you are thinking about our audience, and if we're thinking about secondary health students, we know that peer pressure is a common thing, and alcohol and other drugs are going to be a constant battle within our secondary schools. And so to give students an opportunity to advocate for themselves and others related to alcohol and drugs within their schools or within their communities, that's a great opportunity. Kim, is there any other content that you think makes a great connection?
I do. I'm thinking from kind of a high school lens, just kind of the safety and sexual health, and just being very protective and gaining consent on like the physical body and that kind of thing. I think that being an advocate for yourself, or maybe a friend, and giving them some tools, I think could be another powerful content connection here for advocacy.
Excellent. So we would invite you to make a connection yourself. On page 3 of your training guide, answer question 1. How will you connect today's standard and skill to the content that you teach? So pause the video and take a moment to do that. And as we wrap up today, we just wanted to highlight the other sessions available within our Skills-Based Health on Demand series. So this would be our last standard that we've covered within our 8 videos. You can check out any of the standards. We will also be offering the 6 instructional strategy videos. And then if you have not yet checked out the why or making the shift intro videos, we would highly encourage you doing that. And you can access any of these videos on the MOSHAPE YouTube playlist. So that's it for us today. Thank you for joining us. Kim, excellent job leading us through Standard 8, Advocacy for Self and Others.
Well, thank you. It's been a great one.
Thank you to DESE, Missouri Healthy Schools, and MOSHAPE for bringing this for us, and have a great day.
Bye.